everything I experience on the account of I am. That is where the principle of Shiva is employed before anything else. So we will talk about upayas now, okay? We will talk about upayas so that we understand how spirituality, or how this can be even taught. How can even any suggestion be given? How can, at what place, how would it fly? How it would land? Let's maybe speak to this kind of more practical aspect of the practical. How does spiritual teaching at all unfolds? How can anything be taught? If there is this a truly monistic, non-dual perspective that all this is oneness, all this is at the level of awareness, at the level of the self, just as in the verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Right? It is for the sake of the self that the self unfolds within itself, for itself. So it's very clearly, it leaves no room for any independent activity, agency. Everything is orchestrated by that invisible hand, invisible mind, invisible willpower. So how does that sit then in, let's say, the context of spiritual work? And there are voices out there, very distinctive voices that came into, let's say, prominence, and certain teachers made names for themselves, going as far back as early to mid-90s. And there are now kind of a new, let's say, generation of the teachers who have been speaking from the place that there's nothing you can do, nothing one can do. In fact, doing or attempting to do anything amounts for inconsistency of understanding. This kind of more radical expositions in otherwise a bit more homogeneous circles of non-duality and neo-Advaita. Interestingly enough, just as a footnote, some of the teachers who were more radically predispositioned only a decade or two ago softened in a way and became more, let's say, willing to acknowledge this, what is taking place for each and every one of us at this individual level. So you could see that, I've witnessed that myself amongst the teachers out there, how their discourse, their response, their attitude, their demeanor has changed. Whilst there are still those who deny at get-going that anything can be done. And where does that leave us? If we reflect on that equilateral, that relationship of seeing and seen, that all there is awareness, all there is this self from the capital S, and this awareness conceals itself in the world, as the world, and therefore a relationship we have with ourselves, with our bodies, with this, let's say, experience in the field of dynamic interactions, where the multiplicity reigns supreme. Where does that leave us? What is there left to do? Is it even possible to do anything if there is no individual will? So let's look into this, at least how a Trika Shaivism deals with this. And this is a topic of upayas, Sanskrit term which simply stands for means, how to, upayas. And Kashmir Shaivism, Trika Shaivism, that is, known for 4 for upayas. These upayas are in the descending order, are such that the top of the upayas, simply known as no means mean. In other words, there are no means required, no means can be applied, but since it is in itself is a mean, it exists there, you see? And usually, in terms of the practical application, for that very reason, it is left out. Then the work unfolds within the three, in a descending order again. The top would be that what is working at the level of will. That Shambhavopaya. Shambhu is another name for Shiva. Shambhavopaya. It's the highest of the three applicable means. And the power utilized, the Shakti that is utilized, is the Shakti of will. Then, still in the descending order, there is the upaya, which is expressed literally as consciousness. And that upaya is known as Shaktopaya, obviously pertinent to the term Shaktopaya is the driving force here, what Shakti represents as knowledge, or means of knowledge, as in that equilateral. Remember? Subject, means of knowledge, object. Knower, means of knowledge, known. Or the knower, the means of knowledge, the known. And at the base, there is this individually tailored, in brackets, means. Individually tailored, with corresponding power, that of action. So we'll do the quick drawing now to give us this kind of like maybe a quick, at a glance, analogy, so to assist with that visual pictorial support, okay? So what we have here is, let's say, we'll give it English and Sanskrit. So we have here, right? Awareness, bliss, will, the known, knowledge, action. See? Awareness, bliss, will, knowledge, action. We are still speaking about the fivefold nature of awareness. Fivefold nature. This is what Kashmir Shaivism operates with as that supreme philosophy of how awareness is and how every experience is structured in awareness and how awareness in turn structured through neurophysiology. So in this compact way, this is, some of you will now can allocate that with the terms that you have come across and have heard. So the awareness, right? So like Shiva, Ananda, Iksha, Jnana, and Kriya. See? Shiva, Ananda, Iksha, Jnana, Kriya. Shiva, Ananda, Iksha, Jnana, Kriya. Shiva, Ananda. Awareness, bliss, will, knowledge, and action. This is the dynamic of expression. Awareness swelled, And the rays of awareness is bliss. So bliss is the closest to awareness. In fact, awareness, bliss, there's this, Maharishi used to say, silence before bliss. This is what it means. It took me years to understand that truly what it means. Silence before bliss. To experience true bliss, we need to experience silence. Silence here means the quality of our own being, the quality of Shiva. When we touch that, at whatever level, there are degrees of bliss. And of course, bliss here spoken of in terms of that highest bliss. And then it unfolds in the way of will, or in another English term we could use, volition. Willing, volition. Knowledge as the means of knowledge, means of knowing. And action, kriya. Like this is another structure of all experience. Just as when we spoke about it in terms of that relationship in the equilateral, where, let's say subject now, put it as subject. Means of knowledge. And object. This will give us a support now. Yeah? So, subject conceals itself, hides itself in the objective sphere of experience, in an object. Otherwise, subject and object are the same. Every object of our experience is nothing other than subjectivity reflected back onto itself. Please write this. This is very important. Every object of our experience is subjectivity reflected back onto itself. And how can subject conceal itself, hide itself in an object? Is because of the means of knowledge, right? We know that to be Shiva, Shakti, and the world or individual. So it is the agency of Shakti that here at work. It is the Shakti, the power of our own awareness that creates the possibility for having this objective experience, which is nothing other than the reflection of our subjectivity. As I look at the room and all of you and everything else, because it's the fullness of that experience, complete full experience. If I were to draw, I would have to start narrowing it down. I would have to now start utilizing symbols, lines, dots, strokes, right? I would have to decide who am I going to highlight. Maybe Cody, because he's at the forefront, and Gail. I don't know. Maybe Kamala. Or maybe Angela, because she looks so lovely and beautifully voluptuous now. I would have to decide and sacrifice. But as I experience this, I cannot. You see? So, and this experience is also full as well. There's tactile experience of my barefoot touching the wooden floor. I can hear my own voice and slight kind of like amplification through the microphone, birds chirping outside. A particular quality of light that is experienced now and passes through my retina. The full gamut of this experience. But in essence, what is taking place, I'm beholding myself. I'm in the process of experiencing my own subjectivity. It doesn't matter that I'm here, took the, let's say, plunge to sit in the chair and hold space and kind of come from the position of knowing it all. I could be standing here knowing nothing. No, from Shinola, like nothing. Just completely ignorant about any state of affairs. It's the same thing. Do you see why? Because everything is an object of my experience, even my own body. Likewise, you have relationship with your body, and that little switch taking place there, we erroneously simply assign that subject, eternal subject, and superimpose it onto the body. But in fact, the body is an object of our experience at all times. Every thought, every feeling, sensation, what have you, subtlest or the grossest, is only in the sphere of our objective experience. You see? So these dynamics are given here simply this progressive expression with the help of additional understanding, where that trinity of Ikcha, Jnana, Kriya are supremely important. Will, knowledge, and action is another constituency of every experience. Please be attentive here just for a little longer. So these are the objective, the subjective point of view, that, let's say, universal point, that Shiva point, is an expression of will. Shakti point, means of knowledge, is an expression of knowledge. And we already have that, knowledge. And objective sphere of experience, or an object, is expression of action. This is action, where action takes place. You see? Ikcha, Jnana, Kriya completes this relationship that equilateral of Kashmir Shaivism operates with. Or, we could also do the Trishula, because that's what Trishula is really means, you see? Maybe we should do this now. Just like our new kind of like concealed, like rock and roll, Yeah, or like this. Yeah, did you point like this? So that's the trinity of experience. That's the trinity of experience. Well, we just kind of thought not to offend our poetically sensitive one, we came up with that in our logo. So the same thing. So this, we will expand throughout the entire immersion, the fullness of how everything can be neatly and beautifully seen through the relationship exemplified by that trinity of experience. And this is where the ancient Vedic wisdom is on par with ancient Tantric wisdom, because all of them are interrelated, interconnected. It is that what in Veda expressed as the Samhita of Rishi Devata Chandas. Samhita is togetherness, always together. Sam, that what holds it together, sam. Samhita of Rishi, here, Rishi, seer, right? We talked about it, seer. Samhita of Rishi, Devata, seeing. And Chandas is that what is seen. Seer, seeing, seen. In Kashmir Shaivism, it is simply expressed through pramana, prameya, and pramata. So this is just not to clutter your head with too many Sanskrit terms. We speak about it simply in terms of Shiva Shakti, individual, or Shiva Shakti, the world. World and individual are the same. So this dynamic here, will, knowledge, and action, is a composite of all experiences. There is absolutely no experience possible without the energies, Shaktis, of this in taking place. So they are spoken of as such. They're spoken of as, in terms of awareness, Shiva. And Shiva's nature is Ananda Shakti. Shiva's nature, Shiva's essence is Ananda Shakti. Shiva expresses his Ananda Shakti through Ikcha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and Kriya Shakti, or through will, knowledge, and action. Just reflect on this yourself, make it your own. In order for anything to take place, there has to be will, knowledge how, and then it naturally converts into action. From the simplest, most mundane, most banal act to the most grandiose thing ever. To getting up and drinking a glass of water, this is required. This is intact. To go and conquer entire Asia, as Alexander the Great did, the same principle is in motion. So it's not like it's active only or valid or relevant only at the level where we conceive some great ideas. No. It's always intact. I need to decide now, continue standing here or going back to my seat and continue from there. Intact. How are we doing with time to wrap it all up? That intact. This is employed. That's how we're doing in time. I mean, like, okay. So this is to be understood. And this is why we superimposed it here on our equilateral. As I said already, I suggested, like if we decide to come up with our own tattoo line, just as we're going to come up with our own apparel, it's only a matter of time when we start expanding and we start merchandising our spiritual knowledge, right? Well, to get something for the spiritual center, right? So we're going to ask for 10 million, but that's just to start things going. We need to have business in place. So we are discussing already what would work, Trishula, lotus, or maybe equilateral. It's like very magical, mysterious. And everyone decides where to place. This is where the freedom. See, there's no such thing as like impeded by. No, you choose your own favorite, lovely little intimate sport. I'm deciding still between the chest or the back. Just need to know where the more photogenic on pictures. Therefore, I'm still in my morning 40 push-ups and stuff. So, as funny as it sounds, it actually makes sense. Not the tattoo, but keep returning to that equilateral. Keep returning to that equilateral. Every experience is made of that. Every experience is made of that. One of the most important revelations for me personally was, and how I was able to understand actually that kind of, like jigsaw when you sit, and the final piece you put in, and it's very satisfying. When you put that piece, it's just, before it was like something, and then it's like, boom, it's a picture. It's like, whenever I heard about this, starting from Ramanas, there's no others, to like, the world out there is a reflection of myself, or Maharishi used to say, we are never in terms of others are always in terms of ourselves. All this sounded fascinating, touching it, yeah, ahas, as it were. But it all made sense when I viscerally understood, directly cognized, that everything I experience on the account of I am. That is where the principle of Shiva is employed before anything else. So we will talk about upayas now, okay? We will talk about upayas so that we understand how spirituality, or how this can be even taught. How can even any suggestion be given? At what place, how would it fly? How it would land? Are we wasting our breath where things take on a course of its own? So let's speak to that. We spoke about the 4 upayas. We know that the highest upaya, right? The highest means will be somewhere at the top, right? We will leave it out, okay? We will not even talk about it now. So then we have here Shambhavopaya. Shambhavopaya. Shambhu, Shiva. The upaya applicable for bringing forth that what spiritual enterprise is all about. Here is representation of will. The working, the very, very power is the power of Ikcha Shakti. The operating power of Shambhavopaya is Ikcha Shakti. And its principle, its main principle is I am. So in other words, or maybe even like this, I am. Okay? The main principle of Shambhavopaya is I am, the operating principle. The power, the operating power is will, but the principle is I am. How does that translate? It's when, before any cognition or experience can have the chance to be interpreted, first, there is direct and visceral experience of I amness. You see? When there is this experience of I amness. So, and therefore it is spoken of, the mode of perception is instantaneous. Mode of perception is instantaneous. Instantaneous. Is it correct spelling, Lakshman? Like this? The mode of perception is instantaneous. Then the upaya in the descending order, Shaktupaya. Shaktupaya. The operating power is knowledge. Operating power is knowledge. And the operating principle is conscious cognition. Conscious cognition. The mode of perception, or the mode of cognition, is synthetic. Synthesis, in other words. Synthesis, and we will now go back to this in a moment after we'll deal with the individual means, why here it is instantaneous, and why at the level of Shaktupaya it is synthetic, why it is a synthesis. Okay, so, and now is the Anavopaya, right? I'm always confusing those two, Anavopaya with Anupaya. Do you remember? Yeah, the highest. So Anavopaya and Anupaya. So Anavopaya is the individual means in English language. The operating Shakti, the power, is action, as we have established, action. And the principle here is what action is literally signifies in terms of its experience. So that's instead of all this, it's the full gamut of all the somatic, neurophysiological, mental, and so forth experiences. So it's everything. So it's like we can fill in the whole thing here. So it's not just the principle I am, or in the Shaktopaya conscious cognition. This is from bending the body this way, it's beneficial, to having the mudra this way, to breathing that way, to going and washing the dishes for nothing, to doing this, doing the karma yoga. All this is the way how Anavapaya is meant to be practiced and what the driving force. The mode of perception is sequential. Is it Q? Q, right? Sequential, like that? So the mode of perception is sequential. We can see here instantaneous, synthetic, sequential. Why? Well, Shaivism also known for and derives its name as that trika, aside from and including to what has been mentioned so far, right? It is representing here the very principles here, the very, very universal principles of, let's say, how this can be spoken of in terms of pure, impure, and impure. Not to give the psychological connotations to these terms. Okay? It's not in terms of hygiene or what have you. Or it's in terms of quality of awareness. Shambhavopaya is an expression of that, what here is give rise to pure knowledge, pure awareness. In case of Shaktupaya, where the synthesis is at work, it is pure and impure. You see? There is another term used in addition, is supreme. Not sure how to spell it, but supreme, right? Then here will be obviously supreme, non-supreme, non-supreme, and here it will be obviously non-supreme. Why? Well, for obvious reasons. This is where awareness at the level of, at the baseline, is concealed to itself. So it has momentarily glimpses, this and that, and then we come out of that concealment. We come out of that, let's say, cloud, that whatever that, but it is for that reason spoken of as non-supreme. So these four, but applicable three, is the full gamut of how all spiritual methodology can be practiced, and it is practiced. Whether it is applied by perceptor to the one who is eager to expand his or her awareness, or if it is applied by someone to oneself. Makes no difference. These upayas are always at work, from individually tailored means to consciously tailored means to I am based or supreme tailored means, where very different modus operandi at work. The important here thing to consider is that whilst the base level, obviously, which has all this, fill the gaps, all the spiritual methodologies are here, belong to the individual means, as far and as long as individual is addressed. For example, question is asked in the darshan, in the live immersion, what have you. And the question comes from the personal point of view. I woke up 4 years ago, 20 years ago, or I have this, I had a difficult childhood, or I had a fantastic career. And like, you see, it's individual perspective. And that individual perspective asking for help, asking for guidance, confirmation, guidance, what have you. So obviously it would work from that level. If there is a window, if there is a possibility to give a higher shot, the perceptor might consider taking individual beyond that state of individuality and see if we can work at the level of Shaktopaya, the level of conscious means. See? At the level of conscious means. Here, everything is sequential, linear. I have a story, I have a background, I have a biography, I woke up, I have this, that. In fact, I even speak about my awakening 4 years ago versus 10 years ago. See? So at that level, if the conversation is at that level, we apply everything at that level. Well, all the boxes are ticked when work is continuously done there and we could feel that one can progress, we never hesitate to raise the mark, raise the plank. Furthermore, someone who is already has that synthetic perception, there is a tremendous amount of experience, and the mode of perception is where the synthesis dominates. Not sequence, but synthesis. It's synthesized. One has the capacity and ability to apply conscious-based methodologies. One, as it were, is firmly ready for the highest means which will work from the level of instantaneous cognition with the operating modus operandi in I am. You will ask me then, so is it always done in that manner? No. In the work we do, you might notice that we always start from Shambhavopaya. We always start from here. We always give a highest shot first. We always start from the place of, as it were, where the first step equals to the last, remember? So we begin the discourse, we open up from the highest reminder. But of course, with some it will land, with others it will fizzle away. So then we continue the work, and we work at that level. And of course, this is a bread and butter, so we apply it at all times anyway, hence the container. In this, let's say, map, it's worthy to bring it as a reminder, because many people have asked, even people who either self-taught or learn about it from other teachers, they come and they ask me about, like, what prevents me from always working at the level of Shambhavopaya? Like, I'm ready. I want to work at that level. I want to work at the level of what we just spoke about, at that highest level. You see, I'm done with all the yoga, with all these, working on my psychological makeup, and like, I've done my work. Yes, like, this also level of consciousness is energetic level, because it corresponds to that. I've done that. I want to work only on that level. And the reminder here is that, yes, by all means, but the Kundalini need to be fully awakened, fully active, and preferably move unabstractedly. Because Kundalini is consciousness. So what is Kundalini? Kundalini is that what is representing this contracted state of affairs, where that what is in the previous page was represented by Shivananda, right? Shiva Ananda. We can say them separately, we can say them together. Awareness, bliss. Awareness, bliss undergoes self-transfiguration, and through the force of prana becomes that what we then call individual experience. So there is no individual experience without coiled Kundalini. Kundalini can be spoken and should be spoken and is spoken in terms of contracted consciousness. Contracted consciousness. So it's literally consciousness undergone transfiguration. It contracted to itself. See? And in contracting to itself, it's then logically speaking, esoterically speaking, it falls into a state of slumber. It's like a repose. It's like this self-imposed slumber. The scriptures speak about it as that great serpent biting with its mouth the entrance to Sushumna and intoxicated by the poison that is released through the entire body. And that what we experience is the result of that poison. So this at least is an internal yogic tantric understanding, and why Kundalini needs to uncoil from that. Because up until that happens, everything is but a wishful thinking. Everything is futile. You can't work at any levels other than at that level. And those who apply highest methodology forget that they are applying it to that what at the base of the triangle represents Nara. Entiendo why that is? So in other words, one goes, hears non-dual discourse by a non-dual teacher, where Shambhavopaya constantly being thrown at you, and you walk out of there thinking that you grasp that supreme essence. Well, whilst what happened is that it's simply incorporated into that level of consciousness. For it to become reality of experience, consciousness itself need to awaken and uncoil. So this is why Shambhavopaya will not fly unless consciousness has wings. It makes perfect sense, I think. That's why Kundalini is that's a symbology traveled throughout the world, and that's why we have a dove above Christ. That survived archetypal symbology. Just as there are wings, two pair of wings, at the top of the staff of Caduceus, just as that symbol here represented by that cascading, right, serpentine movements of the pranic flow, and at the top were often portrayed by two snakes. Have you seen that? And they meet together, and there are wings. Now, see, so in other words, consciousness is freed now from its place of contraction, where it literally intoxicated by the poison released throughout its entire body. It is now free. And so that symbology miraculously somehow survived Christianity and often could be found in frescoes, like that beautiful Pier della Francesca when Christ received the baptism from Johann right, from St. John, the Baptist. There is a dove, white dove, right above Christ's head. See? The Sanskrit term, Vedic term for absolute is Brahman. We use the tantric term Shiva. Brahman and Shiva are the same reality, absolute reality. And Brahman is the term used by Vedantists. And the root of the term that is made out of the transliteration of the B and R, br, bra, Bru means to expand, to go beyond, to expand. So the etymology of the term Brahman, it's the expansion of absolute. So let's say this dot represents that singularity of absolute. It represents this compact mass of awareness, compact mass of undifferentiated awareness. And then, under that self-propelling quality, it begins to expand. Through series of this cyclic, right, movements, it expands. You see this movement? It has this movement altogether, outward. Pictorially, we're using this analogy, to the point of utmost contraction. From the point of compact mass of consciousness, undifferentiated, it expands, but the cost of that expansion is a complete and utter contraction of its qualities. See? It expands as the universe, but contracts to itself. So this could be seen also in reverse. You see? So in other words, it has two movements. The movement in a descending order where it expands whilst simultaneously contracts to the degree of this individual experience. And at the very same time, it has that inherent in its expansion / contraction, the opposite of that, exemplified by that utmost point. So just as there is a bindu as the point of origination, there is a bindu as the point of utmost contraction. This represented by the aforementioned Kundalini in a state of slumber. Kundalini, consciousness. So this force of expansion and the force / contraction and the force of contraction / expansion is complementary to what we spoke about when we spoke about Spanda. When we talk about Kundalini, so we have this simultaneous kind of perspective, which graphically literally represents hereby that movement, right? That movement, which simply goes in progressive degrees, right? It reaches stages where it's cascading down, continuously cascading down as what then becomes a shared experience of the world. And you can continue that, okay? See? The 1 gives rise to 2, right? Then to 3, and then 5, and then the whole multiplicity is set in motion. Likewise, that same movement is this way. See? So when we speak of Kundalini and when we speak of ultimate reality or absolute, when we speak of Brahman or Shiva versus Kundalini, it is the pranic force that prompts Shiva or Brahman to expand. Prana here is the active agency of consciousness. It expands, and in its expansion, it becomes this world, this universe, But the expense, the price to pay, is the utmost contraction. It's like between this and that, you tell me. Between this and that, this is beyond time, space. It's not impeded by anything. It's beyond of the beyond of the beyond. Undifferentiated mass of awareness. No time, no space. No contraction. And the price for that expansion, the price for all this multiplicity, infinite multiplicity, is this. See? So in other words, speaking now in terms of physics of that whole thing, you can now understand how that whole language of the poets and the mystics, what power it took for an ocean to get arrested in a drop. What power it amounts for an ocean to be arrested in a drop. So it's not inconsistent to suggest that just as that same force that is required, right, same force for complete and utter undifferentiated state to become completely and utter differentiated, compacted, contracted to all its omniscient and omnipresent and so on qualities, to have that unique experience of me talking here in this body, I am, each and every one of you, undeniable, unique experience. That same force is required for awareness, as it were, to undergo that same transfiguration. Just as it's cascading down through all the tattvas, and each cascading phase conceals the preceding phase, because that's how tattvas work. Analogies were given before in various retreats with something like an almond, how the flower is conceived, and after being pollinated and full bloom, gave birth to that conception of a future nut kernel. So that stage is concealed. It's fulfilled its purpose, and the petals are blown by the wind. You come there 2 weeks after, no sign there was a tree in bloom. All there is this small little green fluffy things on the tree. And as they begin to expand, first concealing the softness of the shell, so it will not be eaten by bugs or birds, the nut ripens there until the shell is hard enough for the outer fluffy, velvety shell no longer required, as it fulfilled its purpose, and it opens up and dries away until we have that fully formed almond, still concealing within itself the very, very milky essence of that kernel, of that particular, let's say, variety. In the same way, in the descending order, each tattva, when it has taken birth from preceding one, conceals the essence of what was given birth to it in the first place. And it's an unstoppable process. And that process is reversed when Kundalini awakens, and that transgression proceeds from there. we will come back to this. But I just wanted to introduce this so that we can speak about this now. Then we will come up with something to illustrate this, which will be kind of like, I don't know, maybe computer design will be more fitting here. But it will be like, for example, something like that, right? A cone, right? A cone, which will stand for that shape. From that point of singularity to all the way to the base where it expands as the world. And likewise, it is the same situation here. You see? When awareness expands, it contracts to itself. See? You can't have your cake and eat it too. When that same awareness now undergoes the process of expansion, it also coincides with the movement of contraction. There is two movements in one exemplified. Here, the sacrifice is unity, so that diversity can take place and so that individuality can be experienced. And here that is in reverse. You see? In order to experience unity, this needs to be sacrificed. At both ends, there is a sacrifice taking place. Here is a sacrifice, here is a sacrifice. This is the dynamics, interacting dynamics within awareness. This is universe self-interacting universe. Because universe is here, the body of Shiva. This I thought to bring, and I don't know how can I, with Jake, we need to sit down and have some coffee together and see how can that be done graphically. Because I can see it internally, and it's very beautiful. Right? Imagine how can we make a prop, so physical, graphical, like sculpture. It'll be fun. It'll really be fun. We'll come back to this with some hints and insights, but that's what we here have, okay? This propensity to contract at the expense of its freedom, so as multiplicity to take place, and propensity to expand at the expense of its individuality, so that the unity prevail. Legitimate question should be asked. Is it either or, always? No? Isn't that a legitimate question? Is it always either or? It is the same. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Shiva is here, Shiva is here. Shiva as individual, Shiva as universal consciousness. Individual consciousness, universal consciousness. But what I'm asking you is that you should be asking, because I'm curious too, is it either or? Is it always this sacrifice? Is it always this compromise? Or can it be lived at once? In terms of what is happening, this and that, in the state of creative tension, and that is always resolved by the very principle of I-ness. In both cases, it's the experience of universal egoity. In both cases, unity or diversity, unity or the experience of individuality are just different modes of perception. It's the mode of perception that differs. So its I observes itself from the place of compact mass of consciousness. And that same I observes itself, experiences itself as the totality of its self-expression through forms and phenomena. The difference is only in the mode of cognition. See? Other than that, this creative tension remains unresolvable because in order for the multiplicity to take place, Shiva has to forgo its nature. You see? There's no way out of that. That's what it means, the cake story. That's the true definition of that English proverb. So, to enjoy the taste of that cake, Shiva eats himself out. You see? And that what he experiences is the world. And he forgone his nature. See? Now, what Angela has suggested, though, is the intricate understanding of the Kashmir Shaiva philosophy we have spoken so far, that at the level of this phenomenal reality, this experience already reconciled behind the scenes. So this is what I feel very happy today. I will sleep very well, because this understanding is supreme, that every experience has this aspect where the experience is set, progresses, and withdrawn. Every experience, absolutely. And in the moment that that experience is withdrawn, this whole creative dynamic, this whole interaction is completed. So in other words, it's like a secret within a secret. On one hand, Shiva as if forgone his nature, but he will be a simpleton if he just did that. He left the possibility of knowing himself through experience. So each time anything is experienced is a reminder, a continued reminder. This is the secret supreme. This is why Kashmir Shaivism was dubbed as the greatest teaching India has ever offered, by the likes of Romain Rolland, or his friend Rabindranath Tagore, or Sri Yuktiswar, or Aurobindo Ghosh, and for that matter, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, but he spun it into his own science of creative intelligence. But it is based on this. This is what it means, that at the level of experience, that unity is restored. See? So it's like this hidden dimension. So this is the non-dual understanding. This is a true Advaitic understanding, the place of this world in relation to the Absolute.